Hearing, if you could all kindly stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we see Dr. Romanelli is ready to go, so we're going to turn it right over to you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Tussey. So we are here, thanks everyone for being here this evening. We are here for our budget hearing. We recently adopted our budget on April 16th at our most recent Board of Education meeting. We were faced with a very challenging budget year. The initial executive budget that came out from Governor Hochul included a cut in our foundation aid and did away with something called Save Harmless, which many people may have heard of, which talks about receiving the same amount of foundation aid that you would have received in the previous year. So that's a really good way for districts to be able to budget long term, knowing that you're going to get a certain amount of aid, but with that being removed, we were faced with a really big challenge. So just a big thank you to all of our PTAs, our teachers, everyone that helped out with the letter writing campaign that we had, and did a lot of advocacy to have that foundation aid restored, which it eventually was. The budget that we adopted did anticipate that we would have that foundation aid back, so we were happy to see that it was restored there. However, there were other challenges in the budget this year. Rising costs, as everyone knows, inflation being up, costs of transportation, health insurance, things along those lines. So we were forced to take a look at some of our structure and do a little bit of restructuring within the district to try to make sure that we could have no impact on our students in the buildings, on our instructional program, and really make sure that we were able to move forward delivering the same strong instructional program that we have always had in West Islip. So we did take a look at different positions, some of our aides in our buildings, some of our teaching assistants. We took a look at summer school and how that would be funded from families for students that did attend summer school. That is not the extended school year program. We're still keeping that in place. We're still keeping in summer investigations. That refers to the middle school and high school program, where if students are unsuccessful in passing a class, they would take a class for credit over the summer. We also did a restructuring of our pre-K programs, where we're talking about moving pre-K sections out of our elementary school, one section out of each elementary school over the course of the next 2 years, and into South Shore Children's Center. This is really two pieces here. There is a budget savings there, but we also have space issues in some of our buildings. So Manitowoc and Paul J. Ballou are the two buildings that we're going to be moving those classes from pre-K into South Shore for next year, and Bayview and Oakwood will be for the following year. So really that was really the theme of our budget. It was trying to find ways to restructure, to do what we could internally to find some savings but still preserve our programs. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Bellotti. We'll get into some of those specifics with you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Romanelli. Good evening, everyone. So these are our projected average class sizes for the 2024-25 school year, and we monitor these numbers very closely over the next several months. We are not yet finished going through the CSE or CPSE processes and meetings, so these numbers can and will change most likely, and enrollment also tends to change over the summer. But this is where we are right now. So as Dr. Romanelli mentioned, it was a very challenging budget year. However, we still were able to include and incorporate some really great things into our budget for next year. We were able to hire a board-certified behavior analyst, a BCBA, for next year at a 1.0 FTE. We are going to be able to add a speech therapist, an E&L teacher, and an elementary teacher due to increased enrollment. We started this year at Beach Middle School the integrated co-teach in 6th grade. We're going to be continuing and expanding that into the 7th grade next year. Foundations has been taking place in our pre-K through grade 2, so we're looking to expand that next year into grade 3. We are also offering additional CTE courses in science and engineering technology next year at the high school. As Dr. Romanelli mentioned, we are having increased enrollment in UPK. We're at about 264 students right now for next year that are enrolled. And our Chromebook and smartboard replenishment is on a cycle each year, so included in the budget for next year are kindergarten, second grade, and ninth grade new Chromebooks, as well as some smartboard replenishments, and of course, continued PD for all of our staff. On the ballot on May 21st, you will see two propositions. The first is our school budget for the $138.8 million you see up there. The second is for the use of both capital reserves. We actually have two in our district. And that is in a not to exceed amount of $860,000. You will also be asked to vote on two board trustee seats. The two candidates that are running are the same two that have the seats currently, and they're for 2 3-year terms. That capital reserve proposition is for these two projects. So district-wide, we're looking to start phase 1 of the boiler burner control replacements, and that's estimated to cost no more than $600,000. And at Udall Road Middle School, we are looking to update and renovate the orchestra room. We are going to put acoustical tiles on the walls, level out the floor, and do some HVAC updates. And that's looking at about $260,000. So this is a not to exceed authorization of $860,000. The great thing about a capital reserve is that it comes at no additional cost to the taxpayer. So although we already have the money set aside, we are required by education law to go out to the community and get voter approval anytime we want to use those funds. So the funds are already there, we're just looking for authorization to use them for these two projects. And any unspent funds are simply returned back to the capital reserves at the end of the projects. This is just our budget at a glance, comparing it year over year. We are looking at a $4.5 million increase in our budget for next year, or a 3.38% increase. That $138 million is broken out into 3 categories. We're required to break it out by program, administrative, and capital. The program component really consists of all your instructional related expenses. It's your teachers, teaching assistants, paraprofessionals, special education costs, extracurricular activities, sports, as well as transportation. And I'm not sure if you can see, it's just under 74%. So it really is the biggest piece of our budget. The administrative component, that $16 million number, is just under 12%. That includes all school board expenses, our legal fees, supervision of curriculum and instruction, finance, human resources, all of our audit fees, administrators, the district clerk office, our general insurance, as well as the professional development for all of our staff. And lastly, we have that capital component, which is about 14.2%, and that simply relates to all of our upkeep of our facilities and operations and the maintenance of our buildings and all of our debt-related costs. One of the very first things we had to do when we created this budget was to set the allowable tax levy. This is the 13th year in a row that we have stayed within our allowable tax levy limit. For West Islip, our tax levy for next year will be $93.4 million. That represents a 1.44% increase in the tax levy. And this was especially challenging this year because inflation was about 4.1%. And it's also relatively low, considering the average on Long Island was about 2.8%. Whenever we set the levy, residents are typically interested in how that pertains to them and how that's going to impact their own tax increase. And in order to calculate the actual tax rate for next year, 3 numbers are needed. The school district only provides one of those numbers, which is the tax levy. We know that's the $93 million. The other 2 numbers are your final assessed values of your homes, as well as the homestead percentages. Those numbers actually come from the town of Islip, and they don't come until the fall of 2024. So in October, we get those numbers. So what we do is we take the information we have now, along with the new levy number, and we create an estimated average increase in the taxes for the estimated average home on Long Island, in West Islip, of $45,000. So for the average home in West Islip, taxes will increase about $149.78 for next year. That's about $12.48 per month. We also provide instruction on how to calculate your own increase in your own taxes in our budget newsletter that's mailed out to all residents. This is just a summary of our budget formula. It starts with that restricted tax levy that I mentioned. You can see the year-over-year change is the 1.44% increase. We then have to add in our state aid that's projected for next year. This number, I'm not sure if you can tell, it is presented here in red because at the time we created this, the governor was so late with giving us the budget this year. This was our estimate. As Dr. Romanelli mentioned, we weren't sure if we were going to still have that safe, harmless in effect. So we had heard a lot that that was going to stay put. So our budget did include the same amount of foundation aid as last year, which was great because that actually came to fruition. So our estimated state aid number is pretty close to what we're actually receiving. And we're looking at a very small increase in state aid, as you can see, about just over 1%. You then have to add in all of your other revenues that you expect to receive in the upcoming school year, and we're looking at a decrease in that of about 4.7%. Our appropriated reserves are actually increasing significantly. We are increasing our appropriated reserves last year, 1.3 million. For next year, we're looking at 4.4 million. And again, the reason for that is the challenging budget year. This is just another revenue source that we're able to help fund our budget gap. We are very lucky and fortunate here in West Islip where we do have healthy reserve balances. So we're able to use those as a source of revenue for next year to help us balance the budget. We are keeping the appropriated fund balance the same at the $850,000. That is recommended by the Office of the State Comptroller. And when you add all of that together, you get the $138.8 million budget for next year, or the increase of 3.38%. We provide significant information on the budget throughout the whole budget process over the past few months. We started our budget workshops back in February. We had 4 budget workshops, and they are all available on our website, as well as the recording of the actual presentation. And we have a budget newsletter, as I mentioned, that was just mailed out very recently. So homeowners should be getting those very soon. And the budget postcard is called a 6-day notice. So you will receive that about 6 days before the budget vote. It's typically a blue postcard. We make it stand out so it stands out in your junk mail. And lastly, the budget statement, we call it a budget book. It's required disclosure items. This is also available on our website, as well as in the main office of every building in the school district and the public library. In here you'll find the very detailed line-by-line expenditure budget, revenue budget, your 3-part budget, the property tax report card that we submitted to the Office of the State Comptroller, the salary disclosure notice, as well as our latest academic report card and our transparency report. Our budget vote is May 21st on Tuesday, 2 weeks, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I take any questions that anyone might have.
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone out in the audience who has a question they'd like to ask? Okay. Well, I thank everybody for attending tonight. Microphone's very loud.
So quiet in here. A lot different than a middle school classroom.